Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltiziak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. In episode 252, we discussed the Detroit Lions hiring of Drew Petzing for offensive coordinator. We're going to look into his resume and why we think the Lions may have gone this route, plus an update on the coaching moves around the NFL and one player we mentioned in our last episode. We'll touch on this weekend's playoff games as well. We'll get all of that and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
Hi, everyone. This is Herman Moore, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Coach Jerry Angers, former Michigan High School Coach of the Year. He's also named Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions, training and scouting director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, you had a cold drive to the UP, but glad you could find a way to get in touch with us.
Oh, yeah, it was cold and a little bit snowy until I got above the bridge, and then it was sunny. Crazy.
It's funny how that kind of thing happens from time to time.
Yeah.
Well, joining Coach and I is the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle, Sports Writer of the Year for Community Newspaper Holdings Incorporated. That is James Cook. James, good to have you joining us as well.
Oh, good to be here. We're here to talk you off the ledge, Lions fans.
I think that might be the theme of the show. We'll see. As we get the show started, I want to remind people our show is brought to you by our friends at Roaster Jack Coffee Company. They're out of Traverse City, Michigan. They've been doing this for over a quarter of a century. What have they been doing? Roasting premium beans from small farms around the world. Go to roasterjack.com. Use the code LIONS. It'll get you 20% off your order. Okay, guys, this happened fast, right? We did our show on Monday, and I'm going to pardon the baseball analogy here, but it came out of left field. The Lions hired former Arizona offensive coordinator Drew Petzing to be their next offensive coordinator. And this happened just hours after our show was done and posted. It was, I mean, if it had been a few hours earlier, it would have been like the Frank Ragnow retiring. And I'm not talking about the unretiring and re-retiring. I'm talking about last spring, Coach, when Duke walks up to you with his cell phone in the middle of the show saying Ragnow's retiring. It was that crazy of a timing. So here we are again, guys, sooner than we expected, but the Lions have made a move. They've hired Drew Petzing, former AZ offensive coordinator. James, what's first piece or two of information you pulled up about this guy?
Well, he's very good friends with Ben Johnson. Ironically, they coached together for 2 years in Boston College, 2010, 2011. So both when they were young guys, right out of college, some of their first coaching jobs. The first year they were both grad assistants together. The second year was Petzing's second year as a grad assistant because Ben Johnson had been there for a year already. And then Ben Johnson was promoted to tight ends coach there at Boston College. So they were there for 2 years. They were groomsmen in each other's weddings. You guys have seen the photos going around social media, those two and everything. So, and that connection is kind of interesting and weird. But there we go.
Yeah, and more about Petzing. He spent some time under Stefanski, tight ends coach in Cleveland. I think he was in Minnesota doing quarterback and wide receiver work. And Coach, there's a coach on the Lions staff that he already spent some time with as well. You've already looked into this a little bit.
Yeah, him and Hank Fraley are together, and so that's a perfect mix when you got the run game coordinator going on with the OC and he's your old line guy. So I think that's another positive. Those are connections that you make when you try to put a staff together, and so far they're sounding pretty good to me.
All right. James, you went a little bit deeper in some of his resume. Throw out a few pieces there just to kind of tell people a little bit about his background if they haven't found it yet.
Yeah, well, one of the things that's always good for a coach coming up the system is that he's coached all over the place. He hasn't just coached one position group and just kept with that one going all over the place. He played safety when he was in college in Division III. He coached outside linebackers at Yale. He coached wide receivers and quarterbacks in Minnesota, tight ends in Cleveland. When he first started with Cleveland, Norv Turner took him under his wing. And back then he was kind of a defensive guy, and Norv Turner kind of converted him from defense to offense, and then took him with him to Minnesota when Norv Turner went to Minnesota. And then there he overlapped with Jonathan Gannon for 3 years, and he liked him enough that he brought him to Arizona with him when he got the head coaching job in Arizona.
All right, Coach.
Hey,
What does that
quick,
varied experience tell you, or what are some of your insights on that?
let me ask you a quick question. Did you say he transferred from the defensive side of the ball to the offensive side of the ball, so he knows both sides of the ball? Is that what you said, James?
Yep. Yeah, it was
Oh,
Norv Turner. It was Norv Turner who convinced him to come over to coaching on the offensive side of the ball because before that he had coached linebackers at Yale.
okay. Okay, so that's weird. Yeah, so I don't know if I'd want an offense coordinator that knows the defense side of the ball. Kidding. Anyways, my great calls, and yeah, you asked Matt what I think about that. As a former coach, whether as an assistant or a thing, I worked my way up through the ranks, learning every position and doing every side of the ball and doing all special teams and stuff like that, so that I kind of understand the concept of each and every one of those things. And I think that's one of the biggest things about that as a head coach or as a GM or something like that. If I'm looking at somebody with all that um, uh, you don't want to say expertise, but all that knowledge and stuff from different aspects of different games, it's going to come into, attacking a game plan. And of course, attacking a game plan, you want to make sure your run game coordinator, you trust him. Well, it sounds like they probably trust each other because they work together. So I think those, again, those are positives as far as I'm concerned. I know we always get that we're so positive about the Lions, but I'm pretty excited about as we talk from this show on how much this means to us.
All right. Well, Dave Burkett said the Lions interviewed 9 different candidates. Again, not all these guys get announced, right? It doesn't have to be done. They don't always do that. This name caught pretty much everybody. Actually, I'm going to say everybody off guard here. Like I said, came out of left field, was not somebody they were expecting. I know Mike McDaniel was a guy that a lot of people were hoping for and looking for. This was not anybody that we had thought about. We even had known there was an interview. So what's your first reaction, James?
I mean, at first it seems like a weird out of left field hire that everybody's going to say, "Oh, well, Brad Holmes is trying to think he's the smartest guy in the room." All those gives those guys more ammo. But in reality, that's pretty much just the casual fan reaction. Fans wanted the brand name hire. They wanted, Mike McDaniel, Kevin Stefanski, of course, the people that they know. Which is understandable. But I don't know. Remember that very few people knew who Ben Johnson was when they hired him either, as offensive coordinator, and he was already on the staff. And there's also rumors that Kevin Stefanski wanted Petzing as his offensive coordinator in Atlanta, like wanted to take him with him. So the Lions had to jump on this, because they coached together for 5 years, I think, in Minnesota. So instead, Stefanski had to pivot to Tommy Rees, who was his offensive coordinator in Cleveland. But he ticks off a lot of the boxes of what Lions fans wanted. I think he likes a run heavy play action system, runs a lot of 12 and 13 personnel, which all of us seem to enjoy, especially Jerry. Uh, ran a bunch of RPOs and stuff like that in Arizona because he had quarterbacks who could do it. Obviously, he's not going to do that here. It likes to take deep shots off of play action. Has faced some criticism for slow developing plays, simple routes, and consistency issues, but every quarterback or every offensive coordinator is going to get criticism. I mean, look at how much the three of us have been critical of Ben Johnson over the years, and, and how much we'd pay to have him back. Uh, but he also had to adjust a lot to what Arizona gave him and what he had. Trey McBride's incredible usage bodes pretty well for Sam Laporta if he can do that here in Detroit, though.
All right. Well, yeah, and James spent like a day and a half doing a deep dive on this, and I know Coach was looking up film, so we're going to get into some of that deeper research. But I'm going to say, I'm just going to share with them the text message I sent to you guys. I said, I hope this is one of those don't win free agency, win games kind of things. Because this is not what I was expecting. Doesn't mean it's the wrong move. I'm not going to say it's the right move or the wrong move right now. I'm going to say we have to wait and see. And I am going to quote Detroit Lions wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown, who on his podcast was reading the social media tea leaves as well. And he said, "Do you guys have no trust in Dan? Do you think they just hire a random dude?" And so the thing that gives me encouragement is they interviewed 9 different people, you guys. And so they checked in with a lot of different people. And so that's my initial first reaction is I like that they checked in with a bunch of different people. This was apparently the guy that they thought was the right guy, potentially for the right fit. You brought some of those reasons up there, James. Coach, initial reaction before we get into too deep of a dive.
Well, you got jumped into the Saint thing. I'm going to bring this up real quick. You talk about communication. You talk about relationships as a coach, from players down, from players up to the brass up. I don't know if you guys saw it, but he called St. Brown an hour after, 2 hours after, to communicate, just say, "Hey, dude, I'm coming, looking forward to it." That right away for me checks a huge box. He didn't need to do that. I'm sure golf, he had talked to golf and stuff like that. You're probably going to go down that. His first thing was to let the players know, "Hey, I'm coming in to see you." Love that concept. So, and then, again, what's your first reaction? What's your initial reaction was one of the questions you started with. What was the first thing I did? First of all, Arizona Cardinals, Trevor Nowaski was with the Arizona Cardinals. So I had started researching them a little bit because Trevor was playing there, and he's my son's friend, and said, "Man, they're going to be a pretty good football team. Their offense is pretty good." And now they got these. But anyways, the rest is history. So the next thing, what do you guys know what I did? I went, instead of going on social media and going, "Oh my God, what did we do? Oh, we don't even know this guy. I'm sorry, did I act that out?" I said, "Oh my God, maybe I'll get on all 22 and I'll look at some film." And what did I notice right away was 3 tight ends. What did I notice right away? Short motions with the tight ends, inserting on a defensive tackle or inserting on a linebacker. And what did I watch was positive plays. We can get back into the coach room. So, you know what? Like James said at the beginning, get off the cliff and start cheering for our team.
All
Sorry.
right. Well, I like that you were looking at the film to kind of break it down and see some of the things they're doing with that 12 and 13 personnel. It seems like that word 13 personnel has been the buzzword for about 7 or 8 weeks in the NFL now. And so that's the thing, apparently. I'm not ready to say it's the thing. I'll say it's a thing. But let's go a little bit deeper here. All right, James, I'll start with you. What are some of the things you found out about Mr. Petzing as offensive coordinator? He spent the last 3 seasons doing that in Arizona.
Well, first thing he did was scrap the air raid offense that Cliff Kingsbury had run there for years, and put his own in right away. He operates a pretty good percentage of that with the quarterback under center, instead of in shotgun. And hey, Jared Goff does pretty well under center instead of in shotgun. So a lot of things line up with what the Lions have and what they want to do. Their offense was 4th and 7th in the league in rushing in 2023 and 2024. The wheels fell off last year. They lost some coaches. They lost a lot of players. They had injuries all over the offensive line. Kyler Murray got benched. They went with Jacoby Brissett. He had made do with an offensive line in 24 that started Tristan Colon and Evan Brown as their starting guards.
Couple guys we know.
Couple guys that we're familiar with. And then their front office, after the 24 season when their offense was doing pretty well, and he got a head coaching job interview with the Bears, but didn't get the job, obviously, because Ben Johnson did. What does the Cardinals front office do? They do nothing to the offense. They sign nobody other than Jacoby Brissett, who played.
And James, I got to pause you for that because you said something. Drew Petzing interviewed for the Chicago Bears head coaching position last year.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's kind of a thing.
That's been his only head coaching interview that he's got. Was after 2 good years as a coordinator in Arizona, he interviewed for the same job as his best friend.
All right. Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Go back. You're talking about Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, so the Cardinals front office and general manager Monty Ossenfort just decided that they weren't going to do anything with the offense, and they drafted almost all defense. They used a sixth-round pick on a guard who didn't play, didn't even get to 30 snaps played this year. Everything else was defense. All their free agent signings were defense, aside from Jacoby Brissett. Um, so that combined with injuries and other coaches leaving, their offense just fell off a cliff this year.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, people are sitting here thinking, well, the Arizona Cardinals, I mean, they won 3 games this year. Now we're hiring their offensive coordinator. Their coach got fired. They were 8-9, 4-13 the years before that. Not necessarily numbers you write home about and brag about either, but you pointed out their running game was rather efficient. Coach, you said you went and looked at some film. What were some things you took away?
Well, the first of all, off that record, let's talk about three teams they played twice. We don't even need to get into that. And there's your 6 year losses. I got off film watching him. He would attack the situations that he needed to attack. The inserts, the tight end concepts, the run, some of his passing concepts I really like. A lot of the cross the middle. The dig routes and stuff, which we talked about JMO and how many times did JMO taken to the house. There was their quarterback they had before that had a tough time reading the middle, hence probably because he was 5'10". Anyways, so that's Jared Goff will eat that alive. I think he took his shots when he had to. One of the things that I took away, and I of course the initial thing as I looked at it, his head football coach, the guy that he worked for there, is a defensive minded head coach. Okay. And so that is going to change how your plays are being called. I know there were some complaints about, oh my God, not enough. On third down, they just run draw, or on third down, they just run screen. Well, as a football coach and as a plan, you may say, don't lose this game. Let's play field position. Let our defense get us the ball back in a short field to score. So I saw some really good design stuff. The one play I watched right away is the shuffle pass. It looked like I thought Mahomes was out there. Down on the goal line, he threw a little shuffle in there. And again, I didn't go through and watch every game this year, but I picked the teams that were in the playoffs that they played, the teams in their division, and I looked at the scores where they had scored 20 points against these teams. They never got to that 30. They never got above that 20. I don't think they did it all or very often, but they were still putting 20 on, 20 on Seattle and things like that. And it was pretty impressive. So I don't, and again, the game plan concept, what he's doing like that, I'm not going to tell you what his game plan is, but I'm telling you the stuff that I saw mirrored a lot of the stuff that we have just talked about.
All right. James, you had a few more things you wanted to get into.
Well, yeah, their offense last year, the reason why it fell off a cliff also was just injuries. Their starting running back James Conner, who had 1,000-yard rushing yards each of the last 2 seasons, only played 3 games before going to IR. Their backup behind him missed 9 games. Their third stringer missed 4, and their fourth stringer missed 4. So they were piecing together running backs.
Yep.
Marvin Harrison Jr. missed 5. Greg Dortch, one of their other wide receivers, missed 5. Zay Jones missed 9. Tip Raymond, who's one of their very good blockers at tight end, missed 13. One of their tackles missed 4. The other tackle, Jonah Williams, missed 7. Evan Brown missed 7 games
A lot
this
of
year
injuries
for them. And Will Hernandez played with a bad knee the whole first half of the season, then was on IR the last 5 games. So their center was basically the only starter outside of Trey McBride who played the whole season on offense. Their offense was just a mash unit all year. They used 11 different starting combinations on the line. They
Well,
missed 221 games to injured reserve this year. The Cardinals did.
that
The
is a ton.
Lions had 195, and we know how bad they got hit by injuries.
Well, James, you haven't said the worst part of the news though. The next part is gonna like deflate all Lions fans, right?
Oh, the part where a lot of Cardinals fans are happy that he's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That seems to be the same ones that are just mad about a 3-14 season. It's understandable. But a lot of them also think the ones who kind of stepped back and looked at it really seem to think that he meshes better with Detroit's personnel than what he was given in Arizona as well. They think he wasted Marvin Harrison Jr. Sounds familiar with Lions fans complaining about Ben Johnson not using Jamison Williams enough. But I also think that Marvin Harrison Jr. is not good as they think he is. He's just not as fast as they think he was. And after he stopped force feeding him, that was pretty good. I mean, their offense did, a lot better. So, and then you had Kyler Murray taking the most sacks in the NFL on deep throws, and then they put Brissett in there. Magically, that issue goes away. He's had to adjust to a lot of different things. He went
Okay.
from having a top 10 rushing offense for 2 years to having a top 10 passing offense this year.
Well, and I think you talked about it right there. There's a lot of great information in there, James, about the things he had to adjust to and how his success changed when Jacoby Brissett came in. And we talk about the fit, right? Well, a lot of people wanted, Mike McDaniel, Josh Darlington from ESPN NFL reporter, Miami area said he had heard that maybe McDaniel, they liked him, but he wasn't the good fit. Looks like McDaniel's going to be the offensive coordinator of the Chargers now. But I think that's what it gets to is the Lions aren't looking to destroy the system and implement something completely new, coach. You've put up how many points the last 3 to 4 seasons? You have the majority of the guys coming back on offense. It seems that you don't want to go with a different philosophy. You want to stay with a similar philosophy, but you need to tinker a little bit, and you probably want to make sure certain elements, certain boxes get checked when you bring this guy in. So I'm happy they interviewed, 8 or 9 people. But that might be it is you want someone who is going to work within the scheme you have or the scheme you're looking to run.
Yeah, and I think a couple things. First of all, the relationships that you have with your players. I just already talked about that. He already reached out to Sane. I'm sure he reached out to the other guys. Those are positive things that you've heard. The other thing too is Marvin Harris. Let's go back to him. How many years has he been in the league now? Okay. How many years has JMO been in the league now? Was JMO thrusted in as the number one wide receiver immediately? And was Marvin Harris thrusted in the number one wide receiver immediately? Just look at those things, people. The Cardinal fans, Lions fans, and stuff like that. We developed JMO into where he's at right now. And JMO's, wait till next year. And so that's the thing is, so now you take a guy who took all these broken parts or pieces and stuff like that without a huge roster, with playmakers, and you take what he did with the little he had, and you bring it into what he did with all we have, and it's got to be positive. Even if the thing is, we scored almost 30 points a game this year. Even if he gets us to a third or zero point 0.3 points or 0.9 points or 1 point more a game and gets our third down completions, our third down completions and runs for first downs. If he gets us to that point and brings that number down, it's a bonus. It's a plus. The other thing too is people have said that I've heard said that, oh, he was close to Dan Campbell. Didn't we figure this out with Morton? This is another Morton hire. I don't even know if he knows if Campbell and them knew each other. Again, I'm not here to say that. But the only thing is, had Morton ever called an offensive play in a pro football game prior to coming to Detroit? Has this guy called offensive plays as an offensive coordinator in the NFL? Yes. And so what he learned and didn't learn and what went bad and what didn't, he's going to bring that into our system and take what his negatives and positives and put it into our negatives and positives, and it's going to be a positive sign.
Well, and if you wonder what type of offense the Lions want to run, I mean, it was
Mhm.
evident all year. Even when they didn't have the guys to run it, they wanted the multiple tight end sets, coach. And James,
Right.
looking at tight ends, they went for it, with continued new guys in there. They didn't change the offense to a different scheme. They want to be able to run the ball. They want to have 1 to 2 tight ends up on that line or the extra offensive linemen. It seems like that might fit Petzing's style, as you've already talked about.
Yeah, I mean the 13 personnel kind of became the vogue offense with a bunch of teams this year. You saw the Rams use it a lot, the Steelers use it a lot, even the Bears at times use it quite a bit. The Ravens, and that's something that he kind of brought to the forefront in the NFL when he started coaching 3 years ago as the coordinator of the Cardinals. Yeah, they were blessed by Trey McBride, but the rest of their tight end room is blocking ends pretty much. Tip Ream, Elijah Higgins, Josiah DeGara, and Pharaoh Brown, all pretty much kind of blocking tight ends who can also catch the ball. You gotta be able to catch the ball in the NFL to be a tight end, but primarily those guys are blockers. It's a lot like Detroit's current room where you have Sam Laporta. Brock Wright is kind of like the Elijah Higgins, who's kind of the hybrid blocker receiver tight end. And then guys like Kenny Yeboah and Horton and all those are your blocking tight ends. So the Cardinals only played 46% of their plays last year in 11 personnel, which is one of the lowest rates in the NFL. They played 12 personnel 36% of the time, which is one of the highest in the NFL. And they played 13 personnel 11% of the time, where the league average is 3.5%. That's the highest for 13 personnel in the league. Um, and the only team that played a higher rate of 13 personnel was the Steelers, and the Lions interviewed their offensive coordinator as well. So maybe that's something they wanted. Uh,
Well, yeah, I mean, the leading leading receiver was tight end Trey McBride, 169 targets. All right. Mike Wilson at 126 at receiver. Then Marvin Harrison Jr. at 73 targets. Then the next best guy is Elijah Higgins at 37 targets. So they're throwing to those tight ends. Now, I don't know if that design
mhm.
is due to who they have at wide receiver, because you could look at that in Pittsburgh, or if it's just a philosophy because they want to support the run game.
It could be both. It could be, I think, also that a above average tight end is maybe easier to find than an above average wide receiver in the NFL these days, or develop. Um, but there was 19 plays in the NFL last year. Only a total of 19 plays in the NFL last year ran in 14 personnel,
Oh, wow. I didn't know that was such
and
a thing.
the Cardinals ran two of them.
Wow. Okay. Coach, 14 personnel. I mean, yeah. So what do
I'm
you
gonna
got? What do you
go.
got on some of those things James just
That's
mentioned there?
that's
Well,
wing T.
that's wing T stuff. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Menominee.
That's
um,
Western UP.
Yeah, that's right. Anyways, the thing is, we did a lot of that stuff too. You think about how many times Skipper was reported eligible the year before. This year we couldn't because of different reasons. That with two tight ends, that was our 13th tight end, or that was our 13 personnel concept. Excuse me, I'm sorry. You get that extra. Here's the thing: is you get extra blockers in, bigger blockers. Teams are going to run. Are the teams going to run nickel? Or are they going to bring linebackers in? If they're keeping linebackers in like we would do, then you have to match. Then you have a match. Then you have to match a tight end and a linebacker. If you put a nickel, slot or nickel corner in there, now your numbers are you're 50 pound, you're gaining plus 40, plus 50 pounds of blocking scheme. So, and then you also have the threat that they can still throw the ball. And so I think that's the biggest thing. That's why it's a copycat league. Everybody's looking at, oh my God, worked for the Rams. Everybody was the Rams, 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 because the Rams had their numbers were so high. But then you look at the Steelers, and the Cardinals ran 13 personnel more than anybody else.
Yeah.
And so that's a big thing with that. And I like it. I mean, if you can do that, and then that puts golf in a situation that puts us in the crossing routes, that opens up the Laportas, and that opens up, it's a great scheme because it puts so much stress on the defense. And this guy knows how to put stress on the defense with those formations.
For sure. And, I saw on social media someone's like, well, expect the Lions to draft a tight end now. And I think most of us I know I expect them to draft a tight end no matter what. A mid to late round tight end in this draft after what we went through last year. I think they're bringing in at least two new tight ends to this offense in the offseason to have them compete, because we know how much they like them. We know how much they use them. But in addition to tight end use, this also could be good news for a guy like David Montgomery, because that shows they're still going to be committed to that run game. And, if they're committed to using both of those guys and using the run to set up the pass or whatever, just to sustain the drives and use the clock, James, it could be a good mixture and a good philosophy to hopefully keep David Montgomery in the mix for another season.
It could be, yeah. I mean, his first few years in Arizona, though, Petzing pretty much relied on James Conner as a workhorse.
Just one
And
guy. Yeah.
the backup running backs didn't get a whole lot of work. I think Connor had 236, and then the three backups that they used, and they used all of them a bit. I got 122 between them. Similar the next year, although he did give Rondale Moore, in his first year as offensive coordinator, 28 carries. A wide receiver getting 28 carries. So a lot of those jet sweeps. So that would bode well for Jamo, right? Give some of those carries there. Um, the other thing is and I don't know if this is just stats from this year. So this might be because of who they had and because they didn't have Connor, who is their run between the tackles guy. But
Totally.
they ran almost 60% of the time outside the tackles this year. That's fourth highest in the NFL. But is also similar to what Ben Johnson does. Ben Johnson ran outside the tackles a lot. The Bears ran outside the tackles 60% of the time this year. So I don't know if it necessarily goes either way for David Montgomery, but I think that in his system, it would behoove him to have a good backup running back in there, a veteran who knows what he's doing and can do all those things. I mean, I'm very pro Monty in this situation.
Yeah, I'm pro Monty for just having him on the field in a Lions uniform. But yeah, you're right though. I mean, those stats don't scream necessarily a split workforce, but we'll see.
Mhm. But
Coach,
part of that is what he was given too.
yeah,
He had a really good running back in James Conner, and then he had three backups. I mean, Trey Benson was a second rounder, but had a major knee injury, so they couldn't rely on him. And then they had two other guys that are like undrafted free agent types. So I think part of that is personnel, from what he had to work with.
all right, Coach. Any more thoughts on offensive coordinator Drew Petzing before we move forward to other stuff?
Yeah, one more thing again. I'm going to go back to the thing with bringing him in with we've already kind of we're checking boxes or hoping people understand the boxes we check. But he's going to be the offense coordinator for Dan Campbell. He's going to be he knows what he has to do. He had to have that pressure. Dan Campbell's already called the plays. Dan Campbell knows how he wants it to be called. But it's also Dan Campbell's an offensive minded guy. Even though he's you look at him and say, God, was he a linebacker, a big D end and stuff? But we know he's a tight end. He's an offensive-minded guy. He's going to play. He's going to play the gamble routine with his fourth down challenges. And now you're going to take this guy into where he's going to be going on and on. And again, we talked about Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson last year for us making a call knowing that he had four downs. And I think Petzing is gonna eat that alive and have a great time with that, and not just we're gonna get a few yards and we're gonna punt him deep and we're gonna play field position and we're gonna play clock management. But he's gonna know that, oh my God, I want to work for Dan Campbell because that dude's gonna turn me loose. Where his head coach at Arizona was a defensive minded because he played on the defensive side of the ball and was an old D coordinator, is going to play that field position game. So I think it's going to be a great mix. There's going to be some bumps,
Mhm.
but it's going to be a great mix.
Coach, do
Yeah.
you think he's going to call plays? What's your gut feeling?
He's going to call plays, and I
That's my
think
gut
Dan will
feeling
have.
as
I think
well.
him and yeah, yeah. I think him
Yeah.
and Dan are gonna. It may start out with them. It won't be a split concept, but if the OTAs and all that stuff looks good, and then in the preseason games, I think Dan's gonna turn him loose right out of the gate. He doesn't have to train him how to call during a game. He has to just train him how his thought is. Where Ben Johnson had to be trained for 8 years or 8 years, geez, 8 games or whatever it was because he had never been an OC before. And so I think that's the biggest thing. This guy comes in, with some experience, and I think he's going to jump right into the fire and help us score 60 points a game because that's what everybody thinks we need to win in the league.
James, I think you need to bring us back from that cliff of 60 points a game. But
Yeah.
what are your
Probably not,
thoughts?
it's probably not going to be 60, but I'm
No.
hoping for 30s on the regular, like the previous two seasons before this
Yeah.
one. And I like what the things that I've seen. The The press conferences of his that I watched, I like the way he carries himself. The video I've seen of plays of his in the run game, he is very similar to Ben Johnson. He runs out of the same basic formations, and he runs a lot of variation out of those formations. Which is much like what Ben Johnson did. Ben Johnson didn't do a whole lot of weird, exotic formations. He just created with a lot of cool, different things to do out of the same formations. He pulls guards a lot. He uses those multiple tight ends to make the defense pull their linebackers in, condense the defense, and then exploits those areas that creates with the wide receivers and play action passes. It's all stuff that you saw Ben Johnson do for 2 years, and people loved it. And he does like a lot of these same things. Not exactly, but he does a lot of these same things. He does those multiple tight ends. He uses them a lot on wham blocks and crackbacks, all kinds of stuff like that. And then uses those blocks to set up pass routes later in the game. And you saw Ben Johnson do the same thing with Sam Laporta all the time, where he would be using him in the first half to block, and then he'd be run like a play that looked the exact same, but it was Ben Johnson, or I mean Sam Laporta going up the seam for a 40-yard gain.
All right. A lot of great information on Drew Petzing. More will even come out, but that's a good start. That's the offensive coordinator. Another note, defensive coordinator Calvin Shepard got his interview in Miami, not getting the head coaching job there because the Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley got that job in Miami. So what are the Packers doing? They're interviewing former Arizona head coach Jonathan Gannon, who just worked with Drew Petzing, as their defensive coordinator spot. They're interviewing him for that. I don't know if he'll get it or not, but that would be another round robin type thing, and that would be very interesting to bring to that dynamic of former offensive coordinator and head coach in the same division against each other. Player, you anything to add to that, Coach?
No, just laughing about it. Love it. Anyways.
All right. A little player personnel update, quasi update, really, just thoughts. We mentioned in the last episode that Alex Anzalone might be one of those guys that we don't know if the Lions can afford to bring him back. And it was interesting, just like a day later on social media, somebody wrote, hey, Alex, you were awesome last year. Probably time for the Lions to move on due to future cap restraints, but you will get a nice paycheck this offseason. And then Alex said, how do you know that? That's not what I heard. And then somebody else responded, Alex hints at possibly returning to the Lions on a cheap deal. And then Alex responded, who said cheap? So anyway, a little fun on social media. Again, nothing's a done deal until contracts are signed, whether it's with Detroit or with somebody else. Alex Anzalone was extremely valuable to this team the last 4 years, 5 years, and I would love to see him in the Honolulu Blue again. I'm not expecting it, but you know what? Sometimes expectations aren't met, and that's the best thing. So, offensive line, you guys, that is an area everyone's just, boom, boom, boom. We need to fix the offensive line. It's a very generic statement. I want to bring up a thought on the offensive line. I know we're going to draft somewhere for that. I know we're going to look in free agency, but I wouldn't rule out the Lions doing a trade like they did for Carlton Davis, the third, a couple years ago. The third, right? He's the third. They traded a third-round pick for him when our secondary was really weak. Right, he actually had 3 penalties and 2 interceptions playing for the Patriots last weekend. But you guys talked about in the last episode having somebody that can come in as a veteran. I mean, he steadied that secondary quite a bit by coming in there, by having a very complete player for that season. So I'm just going to say it right now, it would not surprise me if the Lions made a trade at some point for somebody on the offensive line, even if it's just for a year or two type thing. Either of you guys have any thoughts on that?
There's a center that plays for the Arizona Cardinals that
I was just going to bring him up.
just that's all I'm going to say. I mean, there's there's some things about him where there's an up and coming guy, whether they're going to go, whether they're going to release him. I think it's a contract thing, possibly. Again, we don't know anything about that because Arizona has nobody in there to make those decisions right now. But that'd be a perfect fit. He's had a pretty good year, right, James? You could probably go into that a little bit more. I didn't dig into that too much, but it'd be awesome, And again, it's going to be Dan Campbell's offense, but this guy can help with a lot of line calls.
Yeah, Detroit's usually home to Swedish hockey players. This would be the first Swedish football player, I believe. I think it's pronounced Hjalti Froholt is
Yeah.
the name of the center from the Cardinals. He's only got 1 year left in his contract, and if they're going to rebuild, because they're talking already about trading Kyler Murray, trading all these people and everything like that. If they're going to rebuild, maybe he's somebody the Lions could say, "Hey, we'll give you a fifth or a sixth or seventh round pick. Take this guy's contract off your hands, and then now you've got yourself a pretty functional NFL center starting on your hand." And he's the only guy who played every game last year on the offensive line for them.
And as James pointed out, football center, not hockey center on this one.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
All right. Well, guys, let's end with a little talk about the AFC NFC Championship playoff weekend coming up here. Denver hosting the Patriots, Seattle hosting the Rams. We know that Bo Nix hurt his ankle. He's out. So you've got Jarrett Stidham there at quarterback against the Patriots. Carlton Davis III is one of the former Lions who is in the playoffs still. He is playing for the Patriots, and you got Seattle hosting the Rams. Start with Denver and the Patriots. Any thoughts, insights on that one, Coach? Anything you're looking for?
We talked about defense wins championships. I think they're playing at a high level. Denver is. I know everything's going to doubt them because, Bo Nix is out. But, Foles came in and won a Super Bowl, I believe, for the Eagles, correct, as a replacement.
Yep.
And again, the thing is, I think the pressure's a little bit on the Patriots in this instance because they don't know exactly what they're getting, and they're, no matter what they've been doing, or thinking about playing against Denver. I'm sorry, the Patriots thinking about playing against Denver. They have to change, they have to tweak it a little bit just because of the quarterback concept. They don't know. Again, they don't know exactly. They don't have enough film on him to know exactly what his tendencies are. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they change their defense and pressure him to see if he's going to make mistakes, or are they going to sit back and say they're a pressure team anyways. And so I think that's an interesting one. I'm kind of rooting for I'm rooting for either one of those guys because I like both those head coaches and what they do for the NFL.
All right, James, what do you have on Denver and the Patriots?
I think RJ Harvey is going to get a lot of work. They're gonna want to. I mean, with a new quarterback, that's the first thing you want to do is establish the run and make it so that he doesn't have to come in and start throwing the ball 40 or 50 times in a game. So they're gonna try to get establish Harvey and the run game and rely on their defense. Play clock management, control the clock, have your defense take their offense out of it and win the game that way. And have Stidham make some plays here and there when he needs to. And he's been in the NFL for a while. It's not like he's a rookie or anything. He's been on a couple of teams. He's seen different offenses. So I think that he'll be a fully functional quarterback. Sean Payton has just been raving about him all week, about how good of a backup quarterback they have. So that I think that should be a great game. I don't know that these are necessarily the games that the NFL wanted.
Yeah, well,
No
yeah.
Patriots, or I mean, no Chiefs, no Eagles, no 49ers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
also there's a chance Denver gets J.K. Dobbins back at running back as well this week. At least that's out there. But I think what Coach said is the fact that the defense has been able to carry the team so well so much of the season that it's kind of like the reverse of what the Buffalo Bills have been doing, right? Where Josh Allen had to carry the team. This is a balanced effort. So even though I don't even remember what the spread is at this point, I know the Patriots are favored. I think it's a toss-up. I think either team could win that game. Let's turn over to the NFC. Seattle hosting the Rams. We talked about this one last week a little bit. Coach, what are you seeing out of this one? And I got to ask that $1 million question. You're rooting for Stafford and the Rams in this one, or what are you looking at?
Man, I'll tell you. Well, we talked about it. I'm loving the story in Seattle with their quarterback. I mean, he can't win the big game. He can't win the big game. So I'm pulling for him a little bit on that one. I won't be upset if the Rams beat them. Again, it's hard. I don't really have a favorite team in there. I guess Denver is probably my favorite team because I was born in Denver. But with these two guys, I'm kind of looking forward. I think Seattle's always had that great defense. That's kind of what they lived on. They got a 12th man and stuff like that. And I think they're going to be two very good games. But so I'm probably going to root for Seattle a little bit just because of Darnold, and I want to see him be successful.
All right, James, how about you?
Uh, yeah, I think that Lions fans are going to be conflicted on whether or not they want Stafford to win.
You're correct.
I mean, he's the guy that they rooted for a long time, and now he's in somebody else's jersey. And if he wins two Super Bowls, man, then people maybe start really considering that the Lions maybe lost that trade, that type of thing. But I mean, it's just another good game where Seattle's got that defense. I mean, the Rams obviously have a defense too. That front seven that they have is pretty darn good. But Seattle's defense this whole season has just been carrying them, and Sam Darnold has been great. It should just be another good game. I don't have a dog in the fight in any of these games. I guess one thing going back to Denver is maybe watch Adam Troutman a little bit. I think
Yeah.
he's a free agent after this season, and he played for the Saints when Dan Campbell was coaching there,
And he's a Michigan native.
and he's a Michigan native.
Yeah. I know somebody who coached against him.
When he played quarterback against you, right?
He played quarterback against us. Yes.
Well, the Seattle Rams game is tough because, James, you're right. There's confliction there. I talked about it. Like you wanted to root for Stafford when, especially that first season. But then it was like, after the Rams went down and lost, a season later and stuff, and the Lions started going up, I didn't think the Rams would then eclipse the Lions in the next few years. I figured the Rams are going to rebuild for a couple of years and the Lions are going to continue up. And the Rams managed to rebuild quickly. And Stafford's probably going to win the MVP this year with 46 touchdown passes. And so the tough thing is that it adds that national narrative is the Lions held him back, right? That they couldn't win. They wasted his time. And, I think there's multiple elements to it, right? I mean, he did a lot of things with the Lions well, and there were some things that did not work for him, and there's some mistakes he did make even when he did have some good teams around him. And I still think about this season. I forget the year it was, but the Lions were doing well, and he hit his hand on a helmet in Chicago with about 5 weeks left in the season. And I said, we're in trouble. He played the rest of the season. We had a winning record, went to the playoffs, but the hand was not right. And that was not the year for Dallas with the penalty. This was a different season. And so it's just been a little thing like this or like that. And so I like the Sam Darnold story too, Coach. And so I would like to see him, shake the stigma that's been attached to him since last year and whatnot. But I'm conflicted on this one as well. Always rooted for Stafford. He endeared himself when he beat the Cleveland Browns in that game with a separated shoulder or whatever the heck was going on. And so don't know which way it'll end up going ultimately, but it's tough. James said there's confliction in there. Loved him and what he did with the Lions, but I am still a Lions fan. So
Was that the year they got housed by the Saints in the playoffs?
could have been that year. I mean, he was not the same after hitting his hand on that helmet for the rest of the season.
I mean, here's one thing maybe that might set you guys. I don't. And again, could we use the McVay beating Megatron out for high school player of the year in Georgia? Can we use that and say we're mad at McVay because we love Megatron, so we're rooting against the Rams? I don't know. I'm just asking you guys. I mean, that's that could be that another one saying, wait, Stafford, we don't want to hear that narrative, and McVay should have never won Player of the Year because Megatron was a way better NFL player. I don't know. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Well, guys, I know I've been saying this over and over like a broken record, but I have to stump one more time for David Montgomery, okay? And how important he is to this Detroit Lions team. It is a luxury, first off, I want you to know. I know it's a luxury to have him. And we talked about it last show, but I want you to look at what Seattle and the Rams are doing right now. Seattle has Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet just tore his ACL. Charbonnet had 700 yards on the season. Kenneth Walker had 1,000. The Rams, Kyron Williams, 1,250 yards on the season. Blake Corum, 740. Detroit Lions, Gibbs, 1,200. Monty, 700. Okay? Each of those teams have two really good running backs. And so the Seattle is still in a really good position because they have Kenneth Walker with fewer carries on him for the season. The unique thing with the Lions, though, is Montgomery and Gibbs, if you take a Venn diagram, they overlap a healthy amount. So it's not like you have to ultimately shift your offensive concept if one guy is in or the other. They can both do similar things, yet they also have some specialties on top of that. So the Lions are better with him. An NFL team is better with two very good running backs. It is a luxury, and it's one that the Lions could maybe do for 1 to 2 years at most before they're going to have to, no matter what, draft somebody and replace that situation. I just want to hold on to the dream as long as possible. So, Coach, any objections to that?
No, no, I totally agree. Just rooting and hoping.
All right. James, give us somebody else to root for this weekend that might have some Michigan ties.
Well, not this weekend, but it'll be in 2 weeks. Ferris State University alum Sean Smith,
Yes.
who's a head referee and a crew chief, has been picked as the lead referee for the Super Bowl. He hasn't done a whole lot of Lions games, which is probably not surprising because he's a Ferris State grad, that they probably don't assign him to the Lions a lot. But I mean, that is just cool that a guy with Michigan connections is the crew chief for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Hey, the Bulldogs are just always involved in the championship games. That's all I'm saying.
And the Midwest. All five divisions of college football this year were won by a team from the Midwest.
Yep.
Wow. All right. Well, I guess it's about time to get
Indiana,
out of here.
Ferris,
sorry.
Wisconsin, and 2 from Iowa.
James, you got to say that again. I didn't know you were going there.
Okay. All those 5. So you got Indiana D1, Ferris State D2, Wisconsin team in D3, and then Iowa won NAIA and the junior college championships. State of Iowa did. So Midwest is dominating college football right now.
All right. James, or actually, Coach, any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I'm gonna do a little prediction for next year. Now that we have a new offensive coordinator, I'm going to guarantee that offensive coordinator does not run a double reverse pass with JMO when we're only down 10 without asking Dan Campbell first.
Okay. All right. James, what's your final thought? And Coach, I'm gonna be watching to see.
This is just going to show you how brutal sometimes it can be to be a head coach in the NFL. Over the last 6 years, this coach has scored the second most points in the NFL, has allowed the second fewest points in the NFL, had the second best record over 6 years in the NFL, and had a point differential of 902. 902 over the last 6 years. No other team is over 60 over the course of that 60? Whole thing. Nobody else over all those seasons, because you always have a bad year when your defense is bad and you got a negative or whatever.
Okay.
So over all those seasons, no other team is over a 60 point differential. His team is at 902. He got fired. That's Sean McDermott.
Wow. Well, we'll see. I mean, multiple guys that have been fired have been rehired, or not rehired, but hired by other teams. So we'll see what happens. That's a stat.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I'm going to say I'm glad the Lions made an offensive coordinator hire. And the reason I say that is there's been, 10, 11 head coaching openings and at least 2, 3 offensive coordinator openings on top of that. Those head coaches need offensive coordinators. So it's like 15 OC openings. The Lions interviewed like 9 people. They found someone they liked. They went and got them, and they're not sitting around waiting. And they got somebody that they wanted versus maybe maybe having to wait longer and seeing what's left. So I'm glad they made a move. Is it the right move? Well, I think time's the only thing that's going to tell us that answer, folks. I want to say thank you to Roaster Jack Coffee Company. They've been roasting incredible beans since '99. Visit roasterjack.com. Use the code LIONS. You get 20% off your next order. Coach James, thank you guys so much. Folks, thank you for tuning in. Please tell your friends and family about the show. You can find more content and episodes at notthesameoldlions.com. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.